Hello and welcome to the 6th episode of Talking Future, a new podcast by the Entrepreneurs Forum where we talk to North East entrepreneurs about their work, their lives and especially their views on the future and how they're innovating as they plan ahead. I'm Yvonne Bell and today I'm talking to Stephen Irish, Commercial Director of Hyperdrive. As founder of Hyperdrive Innovation, Stephen has a wealth of experience in battery technology development and product delivery, and even wrote his degree thesis on electric and hybrid vehicle technology almost 25 years ago. A former Jaguar Land Rover engineer, he navigates Hyperdrive through new and exciting markets, and this year oversaw the signing of an exclusive supply agreement with Hitachi Rail to develop battery packs to power zero-emission trains and create a battery hub in the Northeast. Since 2012, the Hyperdrive directors, with the support of their investors, have grown the team to over 45 employees with a forecasted turnover of 15 million in 2020. Good morning, Stephen.
Good morning.
Morning. So could you just set the scene a bit, Stephen, about, where did your passion start? It was obviously at least at university, but was it before that for the sector anyway?
Very much so. I never really remember choosing engineering. It sort of happened. It was in my blood, really. So it's been my passion all my life is engineering and technology and looking at what makes things tick. So yeah, it's always been something I've enjoyed doing. And then, as you say, studied at university. So
yeah, was it at university that you started to have the idea that you wanted to do this kind of thing with batteries, or was it? I mean, obviously you did your thesis on something quite different 25 years ago, didn't you?
Yeah, so it was something I was very enthusiastic about at that time. I think though the technology wasn't quite there yet. It was something I thought was going to come. I thought it was going to come much sooner than it is, but it's obviously happening now. We used to talk about when electric vehicles were coming, and now it's just a question of when and how fast, really. So yeah, it was really something that very much interested me, and I really kind of involved myself in the studying, and also we did a conference at the university about the future of automotive technology with those kind of themes. But obviously then, you go off and get a job and kind of go into the real world and realise it was a bit early for those technologies really becoming kind of mainstream, but obviously that's changed now.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. You were a Land Rover, a Jaguar Land Rover engineer. What was your job there?
So I worked in the research department for Jaguar Land Rover, which was a really a brilliant time, because we got to research what new emerging trends and technologies there were, and we bid for internal money. At the time, Jaguar Land Rover was part of the Ford group of car companies, and we would make proposals to spend the research money, and they gave us a big pile of cash, and we went off and built prototype cars and got to drive them all around the world. So yeah, with people I'm still great friends with now. So yeah, looking back, it was a fantastic period of my career.
I bet that's an engineer's dream, is it, to have the cash and then just go off and do it?
It is. I mean, looking back now, it's difficult to believe, but we were very successful in actually taking that. It's funny, in engineering, I think you need a balance of a little bit of play as well, and actually taking those ideas and trying stuff out. And we were given quite a broad remit and quite a long lead, really, that the manager at the time really let us get on with it. But we were able to bring them back some great ideas and technologies that went through into production and still used now on the product. Wow. So yeah, it was great. We worked really hard, but we had a great time. It's not just an engineer's dream, but someone who loves cars, but driving big expensive cars all over the place on test tracks, and going up to Sweden in the middle of winter and driving around on frozen lakes for weeks at a time. It was wow. Pretty good.
So I mean, how long did you stay there living the dream of an engineer? Was it for many years, and then at what point did you break off to do your own thing?
Well, I mean, I was there for a number of years, and I as I said, I started off in the research area, and then I went through with the technology that I've been working with under a team of really clever people, and it's a bit of a recurring theme, really, is always finding people who are really good at what they do and working closely with them, and sort of finding my niche, which was really kind of organising them in that role. And then I went through with the mainstream engineering team to deliver those technologies onto the onto the product, and we launched them. And then really I wanted to go back to the start of that again. I wanted to go back to the start of that journey, but it just wasn't to be at the time where the business was. So I got an opportunity to then go and work for a startup business within a much larger organization within the Caparo group. So I actually moved down south and helped start a new business within a larger business, but still very much startup mentality, which was to do with lightweighting and making things efficient by putting composite technology into structures. And that was really good too, at a quite challenging time. But we also worked on a supercar project while we were there at Caparo, which again was great fun. But again, that enabled me to kind of learn about how business and startups work. So that was an interesting opportunity. So I did that for a bit and worked for myself for a while before then starting Hyperdrive.
And was that in 2012?
Yeah, I mean, actually, Hyperdrive actually started prior to that. In 2012, we actually got our investment. Right. we sort of fully got going. So prior to that, yeah, I'd been working on it for the best part of about 18 months. A real steep learning curve, having come from engineering, sort of project management, and then a bit more commercial roles. It was a steep learning curve in writing the business plan and getting the investment. But we got our investment in 2012, March 2012, and then we've grown very quickly from then.
Yeah, it's been rapid growth as well, hasn't it?
It has, yeah. I mean, the pace will the figures you quoted earlier. I mean, we'll roughly double again this year. So we're less than that last year, but the average sort of prior 3 years was 60 to 80% growth year on year average. So it has been a bit of a journey for sure.
So just for those who don't know anything about Hyperdrive, what do you actually do?
So we develop and manufacture very high performance energy storage systems. So it's based around the very latest lithium ion battery cell technology. So that's what we do, and we're unusual because we not only design them, but we manufacture them. We do it all on the site here in Washington.
And they're not just little batteries, are they?
No, they're quite big. Yeah, most of them one person couldn't lift. So to give you some idea, the Nissan Leaf has got a sort of 40 kilowatt hour battery, which is a huge thing underneath the bottom of the car. Ours are sort of 5 or 7 kilowatt hours. So it gives you an idea of how many of those you'd need to power a Leaf. But our product's typically in that 5-7-ish kilowatt hour battery size.
Yeah, so they're big. So your USP on that is that you design them and you manufacture them on site. So does that give you the edge over competition? Is there much competition out there?
Yeah, there's lots of competition because obviously this technology is now in demand and it's growing across the whole of the world, in particular across Europe. There's lots of companies doing it. I'd say some are very good at making stuff, and there's lots of engineering consultancies and design companies around that would help you engineer the components you need. So it's quite unusual to develop and manufacture. What we do, which is different as well, is whilst we've got a standard range of products that we've invested in over the last few years, and all that engineering is done in-house. So from the electronics, the kind of brain that sits at the top of the battery, and the algorithms that operate at the firmware that sits on the printed circuit board. It makes you do all the clever stuff, but also the electrical and mechanical design of the battery pack, critically then helping the customers integrate that into their product. So we have a standard range of battery packs and loads of in-house knowledge about how they work and how they should be brought to be part of a bigger product. But we'll also do bespoke design development for customers. So if they've got a very unusual set of requirements, then we can develop something unique for them.
Yeah. And has that, I mean, has that been one of your biggest obstacles to the growth? Because obviously to maintain that kind of growth, you have to be focused. But there must have been over the years some obstacles. You've got your money to do things. What else was it? Was it trying to get the right people or premises or?
It's really good. I mean, I think one of the challenges is really making sure that we stay focused, and that there's lots of exciting stuff out there. So making sure that we really the excitement's really important, and obviously it's a great place to work, and people really, the engineers get a great deal out of working here. But it's making sure we're really spending our time on the right things and not sort of chasing every last opportunity that comes along. So that's also quite challenging.
And I bet you relish that, do you? That's your thing.
Yeah, well, all of the above, really. I mean, you touched on investors there. Having supported investors has been massively important. They've shared our vision, recognised the enormous growth potential of the business, and that's been difficult, and they've been really that's been hugely important, because we've been through times when we've not made money because we're growing, and we've been investing in new technology, we've been investing in the facility, and we've been investing in the people, as you said. So for our workforce and the directors of the business, it's very challenging, the constant change. So we're always going through these inflection points. There's obviously that you get periods of where you can sort of stabilize aspects of the business, but because we're growing, you get these recurring inflection points. So that's really challenging for people to think how it keeps changing, and we need to keep reinventing things. So some things you want to get nice and stable, and you put in your quality systems, and you put in your standard methods of assembling things, but you're also developing new products and introducing new things all the time. One of the other challenges really has been keeping that dynamicism and the fleet of foot that you can be when you're a really small startup business. But as we scale, and we're engaging with much bigger organizations, so we've got to make sure that we can match step with their processes and the way they work. So that's been a challenge too. And you never really know until you try it, do you? You never really see these challenges and fully understand how you're going to solve them until you're actually living them in many cases.
Yeah. You recently published a report titled An Electric Decade in Construction, and it highlighted the demand for cleaner and electric construction equipment. So how far away are we from that? Because that seems a big step.
I think you're right. It is a big step, but it is happening now. I think it's always great when we can point to things rather than being something that we're kind of speculating about, and kind of point to the evidence of what's actually happening. And so it's quite an exciting time. And we've got, we're working with customers like JCB, and they've already launched 2 products in the sector. So a compact excavator, so it's a small digger, the sort of thing you'd have in your back garden, if you're digging out drains or trenches or what have you. And also very recently, a thing called a dumpster, which is like a large electric wheelbarrow where you can move material around, what have you. And we see that as just the start of the journey, really. So that stuff's happening. Those products are in the market. They've been launched. They're being sold. And there's a third one, I think, about to break cover, if it's not done already. So again, thinking about the partnership with that company, we've been working with them for many years now, involved in the prototypes and sort of contributing to the development of the product and the strategy. So it is happening. It is, it is the start. So these things start small, but I mean, to give you some other idea of what's happening in the market, the demand's growing and the pressure grows. So we've won a partner that we work with who's actually working with larger construction equipment at the moment, and his customers are actually buying these are contractors, they're buying brand new equipment and throwing away the diesel engines. So he's been electrifying much bigger engines, and that's elsewhere in Europe, but in cities where people just won't accept having that diesel equipment running in the streets and near to people. So that's really what's happening at the moment, and it can only increase.
So it's quite an easy, for all that it's not an easy switch, because there's going to be a time lag, because there's so much equipment out there that is still, it's obviously diesel, but it's going to happen. You could see that it's going to happen, isn't it?
Yeah, and also people have got to get over the some of the barriers that they perceive. So, for example, about whether or not the thing has got the power, is going to be able to do the job, and so the best thing to do that is get these products out there and into people's hands, and they can see what it does. And in some cases, there's a price premium for this technology, but you're talking about far lower running costs. You don't have the diesel. You don't have to service them as frequently. You can operate them, for longer, earlier in the morning, longer at night, and you're just not causing the level of noise and disruption that people have kind of come to accept from construction activity.
So you probably find there is resistance at the minute, but it'll ease up, won't it?
I think it's resistance from people that haven't tried it. As soon as people try it, they love it. It's quiet, it doesn't stink, and it's cheaper to run. So people love it when they try it.
Yeah. So this actually falls into the sustainability trend, which is mentioned in the report. What other trends do you think you'll see in the industry in the next 10, 15 years? Are there other things coming up that we don't even know about or think about?
I think in that industry, but obviously that's not the only market we're involved in. We kind of see this ongoing trend towards sustainable technology, equipment, the electrification. In some cases, hybridization. So sometimes you still need engines to work in conjunction with the electrification. So it's about finding the right technology. I think there will be a huge shift towards electrification. In construction and beyond. I think the requirement, the end users demanding it, but also legislation and the populace. People don't want to breathe in this. The particulates that come. Yeah, exactly. From and it is dirt. They are. That's the difficulty. It's the dichotomy, especially if people talk about cars and the difference between diesel and petrol. We were all encouraged into diesel cars, weren't we, by legislation, and it's cheaper and all the rest of it. And it turns out the particulates that come out of the back of the diesel car are particularly harmful. And they lodge in people's lungs and they stay there a long time. So it's the gases and then it's the particulates that come out, and then they hang around over cities, populated areas. And so I think, one of the biggest shifts is people's understanding of that, and the fact that I think people understood the impact of the environment. I think that's important, and that hasn't gone away. I think it'll be brought into even sharper focus as we come out of this awful situation around COVID, and we look at how economies try to recover, and it needs to potentially be in quite a different way. But people also now relate it to individual health and not just that global situation. And if it's you as an individual or your family, you obviously feel quite differently about that if you're breathing that stuff in. So I think there'll be pressure from general society as well as legislation. And obviously legislation is the reason why manufacturers have to do it. But if you can't then go and do a job in a city centre because you don't have an electric version and they're available, then I think that'll change things quite quickly.
Yeah. And is this part of the report also mentions the government's build agenda, and it's aimed to build back better? Is that what you're talking about? Is to sort of have people sort of sat back and thought, yeah, we should do this differently. Now we've got an opportunity.
Yeah, and I think. I certainly did. Obviously, I have a bit of a bias here, but he sat working at home, looking at how clear the skies were, and how the general air quality had improved. Unfortunately, some of that does relate directly to sort of economic activity, and people weren't flying or driving, or industry wasn't perhaps running at quite the rate it was before. But I think it means everybody has stopped to think about that. And yeah, we need a recovery, but it could be done. It could be done better. So it doesn't necessarily just build, but build back better. Yeah, why not? It's investment in the right type of infrastructure, the right type of projects can really help push the UK to be in the forefront of technology, and especially on the low carbon technology. We've already got form, and we've got a fantastic international reputation as a manufacturing nation. So let's really capitalise on all that.
Yeah. Do you think also this has given some companies a chance to continue to do research on this? I mean, when everyone shut down in March or everything stopped, did your company stop? Because I would have thought it probably wouldn't, did it?
No, we didn't.
I didn't think you would, because you still have a job to do.
Yeah, we had a lot to do. So of course, we had to be very quick about thinking about how do we protect all the staff, make sure we keep everybody safe. but also how we were going to sustain the manufacturing activity. So obviously lots of people started working from home, so my team did, especially on the biz dev and my team on the marketing comms and all that kind of stuff we could do from home. And a lot of the engineering team work remotely, and obviously the tools that we're using today, they help you do that. But we had to keep the factory going, and we put all sorts of measures in place, and we work closely with the rest of the Northeast Automotive Alliance. So I'm a board member of the Automotive Alliance, and what's fantastic about the region is the sharing of information and best practice. So we were able to find ways of working and sustaining our output. So we did dip it a couple of times, mainly because our customers stopped or went through extended shutdowns. But one of the products we make actually goes into picking robots in warehouses that supply groceries to people at home. Right. So, we were being told, whatever you do, don't stop. The surge in demand for home deliveries meant that we really had to keep all that going. So, but it did make everybody stop and think about what the world was going to be like in future, because some of our customers did take a real panic. It's been a really challenging time, and lots of the other partners we work with in the region, it is tough.
And I was actually going to ask you early on, you're not from these parts, are you? So what made you come up to Tyneside and Wearside?
Oh, well, I mean, we love it here. Our family are all up here now. I mean, I'm from the Northwest originally, but moved around for studying and work, sort of following the opportunities that came and the experiences. Mm-hmm. So as a family, we've moved around, and we had the opportunity to come to the Northeast, where my part of my family are from historically. So It was an area we knew very well. We had the opportunity to move to a beautiful place in Northumberland. But setting up a business here has been a really great experience, because the region understands about industry, understands about entrepreneurship, it understands about building things. I think it's unique in that respect, and the support we've had from local government. And I've got to say it, but the Entrepreneurs Forum right from the start meant I was meeting people with similar mindsets and sharing stories, but also finding opportunities. So, the support, the ecosystem around us has been absolutely fabulous.
Good to hear, and I do enjoy to hear that kind of thing. So you're working with Hitachi Rail to develop batteries for trains. Do you imagine all public transport eventually will be electric powered?
I think there's huge opportunities. Yeah, I mean it's got different challenges dependent on kind of what transport it is. The trains is just such an outstanding project. We're so proud of that and excited about the opportunity for us and Hitachi, but also the country as well. Those trains are made 20 miles away from where Hyperdrive are based at Hitachi in Newcliffe. We have to keep reminding ourselves as a region and a nation that we're good at this stuff. I think there's a lot of negative press around when we should be really proud about our automotive and other industries. We've co-located next to the biggest battery cell manufacturing plant in Europe. So it was part of Nissan, now part of ASEC. So connecting up all those things, I mean, we're in a perfect position because we are able to develop this technology in partnership with Hitachi, and we'll be able to make it for them, more or less on their doorstep. So it's a really exciting project. And yeah, there's more opportunity in, buses, the trend towards autonomous vehicles. So we've done a few projects recently with autonomous electric passenger vehicles. So that's been really exciting too. So yeah, there's all sorts of things happening. It's working out that, what's the best fit between the organisations so that you can get the best outcome.
Yeah. Do you ever go back and read your degree thesis on electric and hybrid vehicles just to remind yourself of what you were saying then?
I think I was prompted to not long ago. It's slightly embarrassing, isn't it, when you look back at the things that you say, but the kind of optimism that you have and the perhaps the naivety. But yeah,
some of it, right?
Perhaps, yeah. I do think. I do. It is cringeworthy when you read these things back to yourself. But I do think that there's a degree of of that required when you enter into business and when you enter especially startup, because if you knew everything, by the end, you probably wouldn't do it. So
but that's your determination gets you through, isn't it?
well, yes, hopefully, and I mean it's
madness.
It's a bit of that, but it's a team effort, isn't it? You need to work with people who are going to be able to sustain and get all the way through, because it is very challenging at times.
Yeah. So the UK's net zero emissions target for 2050 is, is that, do you think that's likely, or what do you think, what's going to have to happen before we get there?
I think there'll be quite a lot that needs to change to get there. It's obviously ambitious. I think there are even more ambitious targets across various European cities as well for sort of banning internal combustion engines from city centres. I'm personally not a fan of kind of completely polarised, outlook like that. Mistakes are sometimes made in legislation. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of electrification, but I'm a fan of the kind of right solutions at the right time. They need to incentivise. They need to support industry and make sure the right infrastructure is in place to enable it to happen. It was a huge error in the way, it was mishandled, the whole petrol versus diesel, and the way in which hesitancy was driven into the market, and so the sales of new cars dropped very significantly. Of course, this is all pre-COVID and nothing to do with the Brexit situation, and that really hurt industry, because industry needs revenues, and it needs to be able to reinvest that in new product. So I think if these things are mishandled, they can have unintended consequence. So you need a combination of incentives, you need a combination of legislation and pressure, but you need collaboration between industry and government. It's actually very damaging to have things done half thought out in that way.
And I mean, ultimately in 2050, if everything is, if there's no emissions by things that we use, how's the national grid going to get its fuel, and how is it going to be able to support the demand?
I think it's a really good question. I think there's a number of things that happen that mean I think we can be confident that will be true. I mean, first of all, there's a huge increase in renewables, which is fantastic. And you think of the amount of renewable generation that happens now in the UK, and that's set to continue. I think also these new technologies that we're talking about, it's not just greener, they're better. So if you can do things more efficiently, you use less energy anyway, there's less waste. And I think that's really important. So I think, I read somewhere recently that some of the trends around consumption are actually decreasing, not increasing. But obviously you need to be able to generate it, so you need to have the capacity. And there was lots of naysayers around when EV take-up started to increase, and what happens? Everybody goes home and plugs them in at the same time, and there's a huge spike in demand. Well, that would be true if nothing else changed. And of course, the peak demand for energy consumption is in the evening, and it's when people go home in the middle of winter, heating's on, or the lights are on, people start cooking or heating up water, and then everyone's plugging in their EVs. Well, there are simple solutions to these things in terms of offsetting the supply and demand, decoupling them. So the classic one is just charge your electric car in the middle of the night, and there are mechanisms for doing that. So some of them can have quite simple solutions, but it does need a bit of a joined up approach. It does need technology to help solve it. So we need to be much more sophisticated in the way in which energy is generated, stored, and supplied. But there is also opportunity for inventive companies that want to take new product to market to solve those problems.
So on sort of lighter notes, do you follow any business entrepreneurs? Do you follow people on various social media channels or through the newspapers, or anybody that you've followed over the years and you thought, yeah, I get them and I like what they do?
Well, I do and I don't. I think there's kind of obvious ones, isn't it, that people read about, and you see things on Twitter and what have you, which I think sometimes perhaps are deliberately controversial, but at times people are saying quite outrageous things that maybe they don't necessarily fit, don't necessarily chime anymore. So I struggle a little bit with some of the people that put themselves out there as kind of thought leaders, or people that amass huge following. I won't name names, but I find some of it quite difficult to listen to. I think there are lots of very inspirational people around there in industry, and probably take some more local, really, people that I've met through the forum and through the other networks, who you do kind of you get energized by their stories, and you really take away elements that you feel, even from completely different industries, people's stories that really are quite inspiring. And so that's kind of where I get, I think it's quite dangerous to follow some of the material that comes out of our social media or gets filtered by the media. I mean, it's entertaining, but I think it's not particularly helpful. But I do. I mean, it sounds a bit corny, but sort of more historic people I look up to, who throughout history, there's been some real engineering sort of heroes and entrepreneurs. I mean, again, taking it back to the regional aspect, you've got people like Armstrong, who, when you read about some of the things he did, and you look at some of his inventions and what he did in industry, was truly extraordinary. So an industrialist, an entrepreneur of his age, and again, it does. Sort of place does matter. I think there's a lot that happens in this region which is very inspiring and exciting. Mm-hmm. There's various other engineers and people I've worked with over the years that you kind of do draw inspiration from.
Yeah, quietly.
Yeah, but again, I keep coming back to the forum. I mean, it's a shame that given the current circumstances, that the big events can't happen. Things are done in a different way. But I don't think I've ever come away from an entrepreneurs forum event or talk without really feeling like I've had a bit of a shot in the arm, and feeling energized and enthused.
Yeah, that's what it's for, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. So the very last question. So for people starting up, what advice would you give them? What's your tip of the week for someone? Because you've come a long way over the years, so there must be something you could share.
Oh dear. Where to start with that one? A tip. I think it was a tip of the week, or the kind of overriding message I guess I would have for someone that's trying to in business or start their own business is to persist, and I think one has to be adaptable, but just because you keep coming up to new obstacles or people that tell you that it won't work doesn't necessarily mean that you're wrong. I don't mean to kind of, don't blindly carry on when it's obvious that something's not working, and that's the adaptable element of the message, I guess. But persistence is extremely important.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good one. Thank you very much for that, Stephen. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.